Good day to everyone. Please turn to Jeremiah chapter 41. Jeremiah chapter 41. Start with verse 1. If you remember, last time there were these various militias groups roaming around in Judah or around Judah. I don't know why they didn't fight the Babylonians and try to stop them from their siege. However, they were there all along. This particular person, Ishmael, was hiding out in Ammon, or we could say Ammon, because it's the same location as the modern city of Amman, Jordan. And he was there sheltered by the terrible idol worshiping king of Ammon. So that's already kind of one strike against this guy, but he apparently, the rumor was he wanted to kill Gedaliah, but Gedaliah had dismissed that. We look at the last verse in chapter 40, which was verse 16. But Gedaliah the son of Ahikam said to Johanan the son of Kareah, "You shall not do this thing, for you speak falsely concerning Ishmael." Johanan had said that he was going to kill Ishmael because Ishmael wanted to kill Gedaliah, he could preemptively kill him. But Gedaliah stopped him. Well, so we left you on a cliffhanger. We'll see what happens here. So verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, of the royal family, and of the officers of the king, came with 10 men to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, at Mizpah. And there they ate bread together in Mizpah. So Mizpah means tower. And I live in Nevada, and there's a famous hotel in Tonopah called the Mizpah, which is kind of neither here nor there to our story, but just interesting. If you also live in Nevada, you can maybe remember that it's like a watchtower. This watchtower was built back in kind of the early days of the divided kingdom. Remember that David had been faithful to the Lord for the vast majority of his days. His son Solomon was very wise, but kind of acted foolishly, even though he knew better, following in multiplying wives, multiplying gold, multiplying horses, and making accommodations for his wives, who many of them were idol worshippers. After his death, the kingdom divided, and not too long after that, we have this event where the northern kingdom, called Israel, is actually blockading the southern kingdom. So now we get to the point where they start to fight between themselves, the two kingdoms, all children of Israel, all part of the 12 tribes, but you just have Judah and Benjamin in the south. And Benjamin being slightly more north of Judah, the king of Israel came down and started fortifying this major intersection in the in Benjamin. And the idea was, we're going to blockade Judah. We're going to starve Judah out, because that the Judah is very hilly. You may have heard of the hills of Judah, or the Judean hillside. So there wasn't a lot of mountain passes. Basically, to trade, you'd either bring things in from ship way down in the south, by the Red Sea, by Aqaba, by Elat, or you would bring things in from either from the north, or if you brought things in from the east and west, those roads would converge there in Benjamin and then head south from there. So by blockading that area, he was able to try to attempt to starve out Judah. Well, the king of Judah took money out of the treasury, this was a good king, but just kind of did a bad thing here that he didn't trust the Lord. He sent money to the Syrians, and they broke their covenant with the northern kingdom and formed a covenant with the southern kingdom. And then the Syrians started making raids from the north, and so the king of Israel broke his blockade and went up to engage these Syrian forces that were plundering him from the north. They left all the supplies, the building materials there in Benjamin, and so the people in Judah went there and took all those. And one of the things they did was they built a big watchtower. Um, Perhaps the idea was that they're going to watch out in case the northern kingdom of Israel ever tries crafty things again, tries to blockade these roads, and they'll be able to see it right away. Okay, so that's essentially where they are. Why was it that Gedaliah was conducting business from Mizpah? Well, it could be advantageous in various ways. I mean, being at that major crossroads was good. Being able to see enemies come from far off. Now that you're in an area that doesn't have any more walls, because the Babylonians broke down the walls in every single city, that would be at least some kind of an early warning sign if people were coming to attack. That you could have someone stationed at the top of that watchtower, but also because there probably weren't a lot of buildings standing anymore. The Babylonians would have destroyed many buildings throughout the entire kingdom of Judah. Jerusalem itself was devastated at this point, probably devastated to the point of being pretty much uninhabitable, burned out. What would you do if you're going to restart a government? You're going to find a building that is functional, and that would have been Mizpah. And all these people were there. Remember, they were the destitute of the land, the poorest people, everyone who didn't get taken off into captivity, as well as these mercenaries who started coming out of the woodwork and started just showing up like, hey, we're here in the land too. We never got captured. So that was what you had left. Ishmael being the leader of one of these mercenary groups. Interesting name, Ishmael. It means the Lord hears, but perhaps he's named after Abraham's son, Ishmael, who is kind of associated with being the father of the Arabs, which notably he's siding with the Ammonites, who are descendants of Lot. So perhaps there is a connection there, or perhaps it's just a kind of a common name back in the ancient Middle East, all stemming back mostly to the patriarch Ishmael, but don't seem to see that there's a lot of good people in the Bible named Ishmael, and this particular Ishmael certainly fits into that bad guy category. Verse 2, then Ishmael the son of Nethaniah and the 10 men who were with him. Now remember, there's 10, but at the end there's only going to be 8. We don't know what happened to the other 2. We assume maybe they died or deserted along the way. Arose and struck Gedaliah the son of Ahikam the son of Shaphan with the sword, and killed him whom the king of Babylon had governed over the land. So yes, a tower works great to give an advance warning if someone's coming to attack. But if someone's coming in under the guise of being peaceful, under the guise of wanting to enjoy your hospitality and eat a meal with you, it doesn't really help against that. Walls wouldn't help against that either if you let someone inside your walls. So this was essentially the downfall of Gedaliah. He allowed his murderer to come in. And apparently there was, it says he was killed, they killed him and the ones who were with him. The first time I read this, I thought, oh, they killed everybody in Mizpah. They basically wiped out all those poor Jews. who had been the most destitute that the Babylonians had given land to. But you'll see that they show up again later in this chapter. So I think when it says those with him, it's just talking about his closest advisors or closest bodyguards, as well as his Babylonian bodyguards, as apparently the Babylonians had left some soldiers there as well. These 10 men under the guise of eating a meal. And in the ancient Middle East, that would have been unthinkable. Hospitality is one of the greatest virtues in that society and still continues to be in the Middle East today. I mean, I've heard of people going and visiting southern Lebanon, and Christians, if they're invited in a home and the people are Hezbollah, they will protect you because of this concept of hospitality, even though Hezbollah and Americans aren't good friends by any means. If on the personal level you've entered into someone's hospitality, you have that implied level of protection of friendship, at least albeit temporary, while that interaction's going on. This is just unthinkable deceit that somebody would do this, but here we have just a wicked person. So what was what failed here? I mean, Gedaliah, the Jews still today remember every year in the feast of Gedaliah. It's not a major feast, but he doesn't fast. He's a good guy. He loves the Lord. His father stood up for Jeremiah. Ahikam was his friend. He went through all that to be saved out of it when the Babylonians came, probably because he's friends with Jeremiah, who the Babylonians knew had been telling the people all along that they should just surrender to the Babylonians, just to be killed by a fellow Jew. It's tragic. It really is a tragedy. And I can see why they do have a feast every year. Think about this, though. And I think that as we get further in the chapter, it will become clear as to what the Bible is trying to tell us of why God allows this to happen. Verse 3. Ishmael also struck down all the Jews who were with him, that is, with Gedaliah at Mizpah, and the Chaldeans who were found there, the men of war. Verse 4, and it happened on the second day, after he killed Gedaliah, when as yet no one knew it, that certain men came from Shechem, from Shiloh, and from Samaria, 80 men with their beards shaved and with their clothes torn, having cut themselves with offerings and incense in their hands to bring them to the house of the Lord. Now, who are these people? How did they get there, and where are they coming from? This is a little bit of a mystery, but not too out of the question. We know that there was the divided kingdom. These are all cities essentially from the north, all cities that would have, remember I told you about that intersection where they would have to come to get down into Judah. They're all cities where people would have had to come along those that route, one of those roads, and intersect there where this tower was, this watchtower. And so, and this explains how Ishmael knew they were coming. He was in control of the watchtower. He would have seen them coming a mile off. He would have, either him personally or it would have had people stationed up there watching what's going on from this watchtower. And they seem to be truly worshipers of Yahweh. Some people have suggested that these were Samaritans, or the precursor of Samaritans, because the Samaritans also come from the north. They're essentially descendants of the people of Israel, the northern kingdom, mixed with people from the Assyrian Empire. What had happened was, prior to Jeremiah's day, the Assyrians had come and conquered the northern kingdom. They eventually come to the southern kingdom as well. They they get to the point where they start a siege of Jerusalem, but the angel of the Lord, uh, after Hezekiah prays, goes out and wipes out the the army of the Assyrians, and that pretty much begins the downfall of that entire empire. But that's kind of a story for another day. The um, the Syrians, when they had conquered the northern kingdom, which had its capital, by the way, in Samaria, which is where we get the name Samaritan, when they had conquered that, they exiled many of the people, just like Judah did. Although um, their style was more to scatter people into various places. They'd scatter people from all over their empire, all the areas that they conquered. They'd scatter the people to all other parts of the empire. So it wouldn't be a unified force for rebellion. And so they had some people from Israel still left there, and some people that they brought from other areas to settle into that area. And they end up worshiping the Lord, worshiping Yahweh, but they worshiped in Samaria, not in Jerusalem, to the point where even when Jesus meets the woman at the well, she makes a point of that, saying, we worship here on this mountain, but your people say you worship in Jerusalem. So it would not make sense that these are Samaritans or the precursor of Samaritans, because they're worshiping, they're going down to Jerusalem to worship. They must have heard that the temple has been destroyed. So this is kind of a Jews going to the Wailing Wall kind of thing. I mean, Jews today come from all over the world, go to Jerusalem, and go to the Wailing Wall to get as close to that spot, the Holy of Holies, that they can get. And so I think that this is not a precursor of Samaritans. This is a precursor of Jews of today who go to Jerusalem, who make Aliyah, who go to that Wailing Wall, get as close as they can, write down their prayers, put them in the rocks, that sort of thing. I mean, would they have also had sacrifices and burn incense? Well, quite likely, but they're just not burning at the temple because there is no temple. So they're reverting back to maybe pre-temple style of sacrifices here. Abraham had sacrifices, Isaac had sacrifices, Jacob had sacrifices, and they didn't have the temple at that time. So I believe these are true believers in the Lord. Could be holdovers from Israel, but they could also be people from the southern kingdom who had moved to the north, meaning after the Assyrians had conquered the north, and then the angel of the Lord had wiped out the Assyrian army. The southern kingdom started retaking some of that land in the north and started assuming there was a power vacuum there, and started assuming some of the control over that area. So these could very well be Jews who had moved from Judah to the north, and now they're hearing about what's going on. Regardless, these are true believers. However, there's a little bit of a clue here that they've gotten a bit of mixture going on in their religion. Have you seen people do this today? Have you seen people mix various things? One thing I've noticed at my own church is sometimes we mix things that have to do with like Democrat style government into the church. So you have people voting for a pastor, you have elders who have term limits. I mean, are these things anywhere in the New Testament? No, those concepts are completely foreign to the church in the New Testament. It's a bit of the world has slipped in. Well, I think you can probably think of other examples where maybe false things of false religions have slipped into the church. I won't go into a lot of details today, but think about various churches that you've seen, various denominations, and you may be able to recognize where things from false religions have slipped into actual Christian churches. That's what's going on here. As we can see, they had their beards shaved, their clothes torn, and cut themselves with offerings and incense in their hand. You're not allowed to cut yourself in Yahweh worship. worship of the true God. But remember, like when we had the showdown, Elijah with the prophets of Baal, and the prophets of Baal would cut themselves in order to try to get Baal to recognize them. This is the kind of thought that's going on. This shaving your beard, sackcloth and ashes, clothes torn. I remember the high priest when Jesus said, uh, "I am," and he just, or that's really a Jewish cultural thing that goes way back. It kind of supersedes religion. This that idea, but this cutting seems to be a mixture of Baal worship or of other false religions that has snuck into Yahweh worship. Probably something that they're not even aware of, because a lot of times we don't notice the mistakes that we're making, the faults that we have in our own churches and our own denominations. So quite possible that they weren't even thinking about that. They're just thinking they're dedicated to the Lord, and they're so upset about what had happened to the Lord's temple, and they just want to make a trip to the Wailing Wall. Um, so dedicated, true worshipers, but ones with a bit of a mixture of false religions. What happens to them? Verse 6. Now Ishmael the son of Nethaniah went out from Mizpah to meet them, weeping as he went along. And it happened as he met them that he said to them, "Come to Gedaliah the son of Ahikam." So this is a wolf in sheep's clothing here. This is a person pretending to be a true worshiper of the Lord, but really he's not. Remember, he's beholden to the king of Ammon, Mr. King Balis, and he's he's a deceiver. Have you seen deceivers in the church today? Have you seen wolves in sheep's clothing in the church today? False prophets and people who are deceptive. I think you probably have. That's who he is. That's the equivalent. The Old Testament equivalent of that is this guy, Ishmael. Verse 7. So it was when they came into the midst of the city that Ishmael the son of Nethaniah killed them and cast them into the midst of a pit, he and the men who were with him. But 10 men were found among them who said to Ishmael, "Do not kill us, for we have treasure of wheat, barley, oil, and honey in the field." So he desisted and did not kill them among their brethren. Now the pit into which Ishmael had cast all the dead bodies of the men whom he had slain because of Gedaliah was the same one Asa the king had made for fear of Baasha king of Israel. Ishmael the son of Nethaniah filled it with the slain. And here we are connecting back now. Remember to that story I told about when the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom were essentially at war, where the northern kingdom was blockading the southern kingdom? That was Asa and Baasha. And so we're shadowing back to that time. But here, I think we have something in common between the death of these 80 people and the death of Gedaliah, and I believe that the author here, probably Jeremiah himself, if not one of his students writing this, wanted to tell us the connection between their deaths. And the thing was, they were naive, plain and simple. They thought that they could just go down and worship at the Wailing Wall and have some kind of security, have some kind of safety. Gedaliah thought he'd have safety. He has got his elite, his close advisors. He's got Babylonian bodyguards. He's got this watchtower. He's got the Lord looking out for him. And the thing is, even if you're a believer in the Lord and you're true to your faith and you're trusting God, you could still potentially get harmed by the world. You can get killed by the world. It's just a sad fact of the world we live in. And this is kind of like what Jesus did when he sent out the 70. He told them to be as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. And and this this is the world we live in, a world we might need um, to even have a weapon, as he mentioned to the 70 as well, because we're in a deceptive world. We are essentially out there in the world and open to attack, and we have to be on guard. We have to be watching carefully. We have to be truly like the watchtower watching out. We have to be truly um, looking out for people who are going to sit down, break bread with us, and then stab us right afterwards. We have to be looking out for people who are going to pretend that they're true believers and crying alongside of us when there's things to weep over and be ready to kill us at a moment's notice. We have to be prepared for all of that. And so this is the concept, that same concept that's taught in the New Testament, for when they send out the 70, is this Old Testament time. And why? Well, it's the time when the walls are broken down, when the city's been destroyed, when there's no security, there's no police force, there's no walls of protection, there's no army of Judah anymore. And that's just the sad truth of it, that God isn't always going to put a shield around you. You also have to be on alert, watching out. If you have friends with the world, if you have business partners who are non-believers, they'll turn on you in a second. Believe me. Don't be like Gedaliah, who didn't believe when they told him Ishmael wants to kill you. Don't be naive. That's the object lesson of this chapter. Let's continue to read on. Verse 10, then Ishmael carried away captive all the rest of the people who were in Mizpah, the king's daughters and all the people who remained in Mizpah, whom Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had committed to Gedaliah the son of Ahikam. And Ishmael the son of Nethaniah carried them away captive and departed to go over to the Ammonites. But when Johanan the son of Kareah and all the captains of the forces that were with him heard all the evil that Ishmael the son of Nethaniah had done, they took all the men and went to fight with Ishmael the son of Nethaniah. And they found him by the great pool that is in Gibeon. So it was, when all the people who were with Ishmael saw Johanan the son of Kareah and all the captains of the forces who were with him, that they were glad. So the idea here is that they've got them, they've got their swords, they're not putting people in a cage or tying them up or anything like that. They're all walking together, walking to go off to essentially be slaves to the Ammonites, being led there by this evil guy Ishmael and his people, his mercenaries, or his band of evildoers here. So they see that there's hope for salvation here, and they all get excited and they run back to Johanan. Let's read verse 14 again. Then all the people whom Ishmael had carried away captive from Mizpah turned around, came back, and went to Johanan the son of Kareah. But Ishmael the son of Nethaniah escaped from Johanan with 8 men and went to the Ammonites. Then Johanan the son of Kareah and all the captains of the forces that were with him took from Mizpah all the rest of the people whom he had recovered from Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, after he had murdered Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, the mighty men of war, and the women and the children and the eunuchs, whom he had brought back from Gibeon. And they departed and dwelt in the habitation of Chimham, which is near Bethlehem, as they went on their way to Egypt. Wait a second, what are they doing going to Egypt? Because of the Chaldeans, for they were afraid of them, because Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, had murdered Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, whom the king of Babylon had made governor in the land. We can continue.